My brother's wife excluded my children from her wedding. After 2 years of silence, she unexpectedly showed up at my door with gifts, a gesture that felt both generous and strange, considering her struggles with infertility. My children, a pair of 12-year-old twin boys on the autism spectrum, are my pride and joy. My partner and I have worked tirelessly to create a nurturing environment for them. They are incredible kids who simply need a bit more understanding and support than others. We've faced our share of challenges, from meltdowns in grocery stores to a particularly disastrous school play. Let's not revisit that, and the ongoing battle for appropriate accommodations from the school district. But overall, we've managed to navigate through it all. Growing up, my brother and I were inseparable. We shared secrets, clothes, and everything in between. When I found out I was expecting, she was the first person I called. I stood by her through every breakup, career setback, and personal crisis. When my boys received their diagnosis, she was there for me, or at least I thought she was. She comforted me as I cried and even brought over a homemade lasagna. But everything shifted about 5 years ago when she met her now husband. He comes from a prominent family, or at least that's how they present themselves. They are wealthy and well-connected, but not particularly significant in the grand scheme of things. His father had served on the local council years ago, which seems to have inflated their sense of importance. As time passed, my sister began to spend more time with his friends and family, which led to a gradual distancing between us. Initially, it was just the occasional dinner invitation from Josh's mom or a gathering with Josh's friends. But soon, those became the focus of every conversation. My boys noticed the change and began to ask why their aunt was no longer visiting. I didn't want them to feel rejected, so I made up excuses, telling them she was busy with work or traveling. I hated lying to them, but what could I say? That their new uncle thought they were odd? It felt like a betrayal. When she got engaged, I was genuinely happy for her. I sent her a card, flowers, and other tokens of my support. But when I asked if she needed help with wedding planning, she gave me a strange look and said, "I'll think about it," but never brought it up again. I assumed she was just preoccupied, so I bought a dress, convinced that I would be attending the wedding. The tags are still on it, hanging in my closet, a constant reminder of what could have been. Then one day, while scrolling through Facebook, yes, I still use it, so what, I stumbled upon a plethora of photos from her wedding. I was shocked to discover that not only was I not invited, but neither was I included in the wedding party. My parents were there, along with our cousins and even a few high school friends she rarely speaks to anymore. But there was no sign of me, my partner, or my children. I called her immediately, and to my surprise, she answered. After a moment of hesitation, she explained that her in-laws didn't want any disruptions at the wedding and felt my children would cause discomfort. When I pressed her for more details, she claimed she had fought hard to include us but ultimately decided against it to avoid any controversy on her special day. It felt as if my children were seen as nothing more than sources of drama. I stood in my kitchen, staring at a silly refrigerator magnet she had given me during her last trip, which read "Sisters Forever." I could still remember the moment she handed it to me. In a fit of anger, I took it off the fridge and tossed it in the trash. I assumed my parents would share my outrage, so I reached out to them next. To my dismay, they defended her, suggesting I should try to understand her perspective and that sometimes tough decisions must be made. My father even had the audacity to say that such events could be too stressful for my boys. As if he knew better than I did what was best for my children. It dawned on me that this was a recurring theme. My cousins' children were always treated differently than my boys. They received fewer gifts and less excitement. While they brought my kids educational toys, they took my niece to the zoo, claiming my boys wouldn't enjoy it. They even bought my nephew a drum set, a 4-year-old's drum set, while my boys were overlooked. I decided enough was enough. I blocked them all, changed my phone number, and even moved across town. We had already planned to relocate, seeking a home with a better layout for the boys. My partner was fully supportive and, if anything, angrier than I was. He had never really gotten along with my family, as they often treated him as if he were beneath them because he worked with his hands. Heaven forbid someone choose to be a carpenter, to the absurdity of the situation. My sister immediately broke down in tears, which is often her first reaction to any emotional moment, and expressed how much she missed my boys and me. My mother chimed in, saying they had given it a lot of thought and realized their mistake. My father stood there, looking uneasy, shifting his weight from foot to foot like he used to do when we were kids, as if he were about to say something but couldn't find the words. Then my sister dropped the bombshell. She and her husband had been trying unsuccessfully to conceive for the past 2 years. After a series of failed fertility treatments, she was now re-evaluating what family truly meant to her. She spoke as if reading from a Hallmark card, repeating the same line about family that I had heard countless times before. She went on about how her husband's family was pressuring them to continue their lineage, despite the fact that they had consulted 3 doctors and undergone IVF twice. For a moment, I just stared at them, trying to process everything. My mother nodded along, as if this was the most fascinating story she had ever heard, while my father seemed preoccupied with the porch light. My sister continued to ramble on about how she had a revelation regarding what is truly important in life. I finally interrupted, voicing my suspicion that they were only trying to reconnect with me and my children because they were unable to have their ideal family. It felt like they were settling for a relationship with us out of desperation. They had kicked my boys out of family gatherings before, showing no concern for them, but now that my sister was struggling, suddenly my children were good enough. My father attempted to interject, saying something like, "That's not fair," but I had already made my point. I told them that my children are not emotional support animals that they can ignore and then pick up whenever it suits them. They had treated my boys as if they were flawed, which had damaged them as individuals. I reminded them of the Sundays we used to spend together for family dinners, which had abruptly stopped when my sister began dating her husband. At that point, my mother broke down in tears, accusing me of being unkind and claiming they had learned their lesson. My sister looked at me as if I had slapped her, which, to be honest, I had almost done. She kept reaching for the present bag she had brought, as if it would somehow make everything better. I could see a toy peeking out from the top, the kind that would overstimulate one of my boys and send him into a meltdown. They couldn't even remember the basic characteristics of my children. I told them to take their guilt gifts with them and closed the door, my hands shaking so much that I could barely turn the latch. Afterward, I tossed the presents into the garage. When my husband came downstairs, having heard the commotion, I filled him in on what had happened. He reassured me that I had made the right decision, but I found myself questioning it. The truth is, over the years, my boys have occasionally asked about their aunt and grandfather. I know they remember them, even if it's not often. Sometimes I wonder if I'm denying my children their family ties out of spite. However, I also believe that allowing these people back into our lives would only set my children up for future rejection. What if my sister does become pregnant? Will she abandon us again? Will my parents once more treat my children as inferior? I hadn't mentioned the visit to my boys, thank goodness, as it happened while they were at a friend's house. I had switched shifts with a coworker at the last minute, which is the only reason I was home when they showed up. Am I the bad guy for prioritizing my children? Should I have at least listened to them? Update, holy cow, I had no idea this would blow up like it did. I appreciate all the support and comments, but I will miss my inbox. However, some of you have misinterpreted certain points, so let me clarify. First, none of my boys are severely autistic. They sometimes struggle with social cues and have sensory sensitivities, but with the right planning, they can handle a wedding. They've attended events before without any issues. That was just an excuse on my sister's part. One of them is quite reserved and often sits quietly playing his games, while the other is more active but responds well to clear instructions. Unless you consider any child who isn't completely silent to be disruptive, they're not. Second, you weren't there to see my sister's expression when she talked about her infertility struggles. Reconnecting with family wasn't her goal, she wanted what she couldn't have. When I gave her a toy she desired as a child, she had the same look of longing. Third, no, they didn't offer an apology. Not once did anyone say, "I'm sorry" during what has transpired since the incident. My sister has been bombarding me with messages, filled with more tears and guilt-tripping. At first, she was rude, accusing me of being immature and punishing her for one mistake. One mistake? They ignored my family for 2 years and excluded us from a significant life event. That's a series of intentional decisions, not just a single error. Around 2 a.m., she sent me a bizarre text expressing her desire to be an aunt and her envy of my journey through motherhood. Who speaks like that? It felt so staged and insincere. This is the same person who, when she visited, would ask me to make the boys wait in another room because their stimming bothered her. I didn't answer when my parents called either, assuming it was them. In their voicemail, they mentioned wanting to meet in a neutral setting to discuss things like adults. Apparently, they changed their numbers to avoid being blocked. My husband thinks they're full of it, and I ended up telling him everything they said. He reminded me how, rather than genuinely offering help or trying to understand, my parents had sent us pamphlets about cures and recommended various diets when our boys were first diagnosed. I had almost forgotten about that. I recalled the time my mother, in a loud whisper, explained to a waitress that my son wasn't being rude when he didn't respond to her question, he was just autistic. It felt like she was revealing some embarrassing secret. After the diagnosis, my sister would use this phony sympathetic voice to comment on how hard it must be to have twins. She would wonder if they would ever be able to live independently. This was when they were just 4 years old. What 4-year-old can live on their own? Even neurotypical children can't manage that at that age. I'm still unsure how to inform my children about the visit. I thought I had gotten rid of all the gifts they left behind, but one of my boys discovered a bag and asked where it came from. I simply put it away, saying it was from an old friend. Lying to my children makes me uncomfortable, but I also don't want to raise their expectations about people who might disappear again in the future. Lately, they have been doing incredibly well. A few of you suggested considering family therapy for them. Perhaps I will, but right now, I'm just trying to process everything. To escape all this drama, my husband suggested we go on a family vacation next month, which sounds like a wonderful idea. There's a place with cabins by a lake just a few hours away. The boys went there on a school trip once and had a fantastic time. Oh, and strangely, yesterday I received a friend request on Facebook from one of my mom's acquaintances, someone I haven't spoken to in years. They're probably trying to gather information through other means. Of course, I ignored it. I might post again if something noteworthy happens, but for now, I'm focusing on my real family, the ones who have been here for us consistently. Second update, alright, so about a week has passed since everything went down, and certain things have happened. I didn't plan to post again so soon, but I need to vent because things keep unfolding. First, I want to thank everyone who left comments offering practical advice instead of just labeling me as resentful, which, okay, I am resentful. Wouldn't you be? To answer your question, I haven't examined the gifts they brought. However, before writing this update, I did take a look at them. They've been sitting in the garage for now. On Tuesday, my sister showed up at my workplace. She just happened to walk in while I was working my part-time job at a small office. It was really creepy, and I have no idea how she found out where I was. Not wanting to create a scene in front of my coworkers, I took her outside. We stood in the parking lot, where anyone could see us, so even though I was furious, I tried to keep my voice down. She started by saying she had been doing a lot of soul-searching and that learning she couldn't have children had put things into perspective for her. Then, in that same strange whisper, as if it were a secret, she began discussing how her husband had changed his views on special needs children. None of it sounded genuine, and I just stood there, wondering if she was reading from a script. As she often does when she's lying, she kept checking her phone during our conversation. She would come up with excuses for why she couldn't spend time with me, just like she did when we were teenagers. Then she got straight to the point. She wanted to take my boys and me to her husband's family reunion in a few months, claiming she wanted to show them what a real family looks like. She genuinely expressed her desire to demonstrate the extraordinary potential of exceptional children. It felt as use my children as a consolation prize because she is unable to have her own. I walked away after telling her I had to return to work. It felt rich coming from someone who, after her initial goal failed, now just wanted a relationship. For the remainder of my shift, I was trembling. My boss noticed and kindly let me leave early. The problem is that if they had shown any awareness of their mistakes, I might have considered allowing them to re-enter our lives gradually. However, they continue to treat my children as if they are unique or special in a way that sets them apart from other kids. They should be accorded the same respect and consideration as any other children, not just the bare minimum. After that, I ended up answering my mom's call yesterday from a new number I didn't recognize. She said I was being too harsh on my sister, who was inconsolable. I asked her directly if she thought it was wrong to exclude us from the wedding. She mentioned complicated situations and doing what seemed best at the time, but she didn't provide a clear answer. Eventually, she admitted that she felt the wedding wasn't an appropriate setting for children with issues. When I pressed her further, she referred to my boys as children with issues, without even mentioning their names or recognizing them as her grandchildren. I ended the call, fed up with the excuses and non-apologies. The implication that my children are inferior to other kids is unacceptable. I'm tired of how they skirt around the real issue, which is that they are ashamed of my children and only want a relationship now that their circumstances have changed. After school today, my husband took the boys out for ice cream, and I finally got around to looking into those gift bags. Just as I had anticipated, they contained generic items that showed a complete lack of understanding of my children, things that were either far too young for them or completely unrelated to their interests. One of the bags had a card and a check for a substantial amount of money. Just the check, no note. It felt like they were trying to buy their way back into our lives. I tore it to shreds. Their money is not needed, we've been managing just fine without it for the past 2 years. That night, I had a straightforward conversation with my boys. I explained that they haven't seen their grandparents or aunt in a long time because family members don't always treat each other well. I didn't want to sway them or go into specifics. When one of them asked if they would see them again, I said, maybe someday, but not right now. I believe they don't remember my family as much as I thought they did, as they seem to take it all in stride. When you're 11, 2 years is a long time. One of them mentioned how delicious Grandma's cookies were, while the other recalled not enjoying the smell coming from Grandpa's house. It did smell like mothballs. Then they shifted the conversation to video games, and that was that. I think that was the best course of action. It seemed acceptable to them. On social media today, my sister shared a cryptic tweet about forgiving people who don't know how to accept love or something along those lines. Many family members commented with heart emojis. In their view of events, I suppose I'm the antagonist. I'm okay with that. I would much rather be seen as a jerk than allow my children to be used as emotional band-aids to cover someone else's sadness. Third update, I didn't intend to provide another update so quickly, but circumstances have worsened, and I'm still dealing with the fallout. Do you remember how I mentioned my sister shared that ambiguous post on social media? Evidently, she has been posting far more frequently than that. I received screenshots from a mutual acquaintance, one of the few people who hasn't taken sides, showing what my sister has been saying about me online. Essentially, she's portraying herself as a grieving aunt who merely wants to reconnect with her nephews and me, while painting me as vengeful and using my children as weapons. She even uses hashtags like #AntLove or something similar. She's disclosing details about my children, including their ages, the fact that they have autism, and even some old pictures of them, which infuriates me. All of this for her naive supporters to gain sympathy points. I'm seriously considering filing a lawsuit, as I feel my privacy has been violated. My children didn't ask to be part of her social media narrative. But wait, it gets worse. Yesterday, the school called to inform me that my parents had shown up, trying to visit the boys. They wanted to surprise them at lunch and told the office they were the grandparents. Thankfully, the school called me immediately because they weren't on the authorized pickup list. I've never been more grateful for school security measures. I completely lost it and called my parents, threatening to obtain a restraining order if they attempted something. See the boys. Is it not a huge problem to show up at an elementary school without warning? How could that be considered normal behavior? My mother called, sobbing once more, stating that they were in a difficult situation and had run out of options. I told them to respect my boundaries for the first time in their lives. Just in case, I hung up and called a friend for advice about restraining orders. I had to leave work early again to speak with the school principal and ensure they were aware of the situation. She was very supportive and promised to add a note about unapproved visitors to my boys' files. I felt like I was caught in some bizarre custody dispute, but this time, the parties involved had no legitimate claim to my children. Then, around 8 p.m. last night, the doorbell rang. When I looked through the peephole, I saw my sister's husband standing there, not my sister, not my parents, but her husband, the same man who believed my children were unworthy of attending his precious wedding. I yelled at him to leave or I would call the police, but I didn't open the door. Without a word, he pushed an envelope under the door and walked away. Inside was a formal letter from him, apologizing for any misunderstandings and explaining how his marriage had changed him as a person. There was also a check, larger than the previous one, with the memo line stating it was for the boy's future. As if we needed his charity. It felt like a public relations stunt. Nothing concrete about what he did wrong or why it hurt us was mentioned, just vague generalizations about family bonds and second chances. When I showed it to my husband, he just laughed and remarked, "This guy still doesn't get it, does he?" All of this is wearing me out. They seem to be deliberately trying to wear me down, as if they believe that if they persist, I will eventually give in. The boys have noticed how stressed I am. I sat them down and assured them that we would not be leaving, that they were safe and didn't need to worry. I explained that adult arguments can sometimes take time to resolve. After that, they seemed fine, but I hate that they are even being affected by this. In case we need legal protection, my husband suggested we keep a record of everything that happens. I've started documenting all the attempts to contact us, saving voicemails and texts, capturing screenshots of my sister's posts, and other similar activities. It feels excessive, but so is showing up at someone's workplace or their children's school. My current strategy is to keep avoiding them as much as possible while ensuring my family's safety. I've changed my email password just in case, blocked and locked my sister's new social media accounts, and updated all of our emergency contacts with people we truly trust. I still don't know if I'm doing this right. My current question is how to shield my children from all this drama without making them feel like a significant secret is being withheld from them. And regardless of how much soul-searching the other person claims to have done, am I wrong in believing that some relationships are simply too broken to be repaired? Update 4. Well, my last update was a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't felt the need to write again because things have finally settled down a bit. However, I thought I should wrap this up for those who have been following along and offering support. First of all, we appreciate all of your notes asking how we are doing. Even if you have never met me or my children, it means a lot to know that there are people who can relate to my situation. I had my friend's attorney help me draft a formal cease and desist letter to my sister and parents following the school incident. Although it doesn't have the same legal weight as a restraining order, it does provide documentation in case the situation worsens. Essentially, the letter threatened legal action for any further unexpected visits to our home, my workplace, or the children's school. Interestingly, it seems to have worked. To the best of my knowledge, my sister has stopped sharing information about us on social media, and there have been no more surprise visits. My parents acknowledged receiving the letter in a brief email, stating that they needed time to process everything. I'm fine with that. In the end, my husband and I decided to take a trip to the lake for a long weekend. We rented a cabin and simply unplugged from the outside world. The boys loved it. They observed wildlife, collected rocks, and learned how to skip stones on the lake from my husband. It was just what we all needed. I've been reflecting a lot on family and what it truly means. As a child, I always believed that family was something you couldn't compromise on. For better or worse, you were stuck with your family.